welcome to Vericia. It's a realm dotted with the monolithic relics of an empire long since crumbled. A rough but majestic land of misty forests and rolling plains, bordered by sharp peaks and bountiful seas. Its people are hardy pioneers and newly minted nobles, all eager to carve names for themselves from the stern landscape. Beyond the settled lands, beasts and giants unused to civilization's encroachment stalk the hills and woods, making short work of the unwary and legends of the bold. Yet none can claim to know all of the Vericia's secrets, and in its darkest shadows, an ages-old evil stirs once more.
Hi, welcome back to Boxes of Lights. In this series we're playing the Pathfinder adventure card game, Rise of the Rune Lords. Rise of the Rune Lords is an adventure card game, and it's based on this Pathfinder world, this Dungeons & Dragons universe of Pathfinder. This is the base set. Rise of the Rune Lords is going to be a series of adventures that you're going to buy. The base set comes with one adventure, as well as an introductory adventure, and Paizo, I think, are going to be releasing these every few months or so. So you're going to see yourself completing a series of adventures to get through this Rise of the Rune Lords adventure path. Before we get going, I want to clarify what this game is exactly. It's a game by Mike Selinka, and he's come from a role-playing game background, is my belief. I'm not an RPG, I'm not a role-playing game person, but I do know what these things are about. Obviously I've seen Dungeons & Dragons from when I was a kiddie and so on. And this has kind of been touted as the RPG in a card game form. Well, that sounds kind of like a holy grail for a lot of gamers, and it's something that has attracted a lot of sales and a lot of interest in this game. But at the same time, it's generated a whole ton of rules questions. I mean, if you look online in the forums, you'll see there's tons and tons and tons of rule questions about how this is played and so on. And I think perhaps that's taken Mike a little bit by surprise. Obviously, I'm putting words in his mouth, and I can't speak for him, but I think he's done a fantastic job with this game. And I think the reason why there's, I think a bit of, this game is a little bit like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. Is some expectations, and I want to kind of clarify those points, which I believe is perhaps generating a little bit of negative response. I think because some people thought they were getting this holy grail, and it's not quite that. So let me explain. Is this a role-playing game? No. Okay. What's the difference between a role-playing game and a board game? Well, let me try and illustrate. In a board game, you have a set of scenarios, and sometimes these scenarios overlap, or situations. And when you're playing a board game, you need to have rules clarified for these different situations. But not only that, you need rules clarified for these exceptions as well. These little situations that occur when rules and scenarios overlap, and situations overlap. In a role-playing game, and in a board game, this tends to be a finite set of rules. In a role-playing game, these situations are kind of infinite. They go on and on and on in a way. But the rules in an RPG are provided for the Games Master, Dungeon Master, whatever. And these little intersections, sometimes they're explained and sometimes they're not. And it's up to this person running the game to kind of fill in these gaps, if you like. So an RPG rule set will give you the basic constructs, but there's a lot left up to the DM. The other thing is that sometimes the DM can modify these rules around a little bit. So, if a roll of a 6 on a 6-sided dice is going to wipe out the entire group, the DM, in the interest of keeping the game running, might say, okay, you rolled a 6, you're all dead, but this giant ogre that was attacking you and wiping you off the face of the planet has has got a limp. He's just recovering from a battle, and this 6 didn't do as much damage as he thought he would do. So the DM can kind of, they can role play around the rules and make exceptions and create them on the fly. When you're playing a board game, everything has to be very logical. A plus B equals C, and there's no exception. It can't be D because we don't want to lose the game just yet. And this is the world that Mike Selinka's brought Pathfinder into. He's brought it into a world where A plus B equals C, where everything is logic. There's no gaps, there's no mistakes. And this is what generates all those questions. If you're coming into this with the mindset of an RPGer, you can kind of work around those little rules. But there's quite a lot of errata and FAQs, and that's what I think has taken the guys by surprise, in that all these little gaps, all these little intersections need to be defined. And I think perhaps that coming into this with an RPG gamer's mindset, you are prepared to play the game and fill those gaps in for yourself a little bit, and kind of, let the theme drive the rules a lot more. And perhaps that's where board gamers struggle. That's my little notion. Personally, I think the rules are all square, they're all sorted, there is explanations for all these little gaps. There's a good chance I'm going to have things wrong, and perhaps my interpretations are different to everyone else's. But there's a notion that the point of a game is to have people to have fun. And if the group is having fun, and you come out of the end of it none the wiser that you've made a few rule mistakes, then what the heck? Okay, and if you play role-playing games, that's perfectly acceptable, because those aren't mistakes. But in a board game world, they're not called mistakes, they're called cheating. Okay, and we all know cheating's bad, so that's where the mindsets differ. So let's open the box and take a look inside. We have a rule book, and it's not massive. Okay, now one of the things that this game does borrow from RPGs, and this is something that I think is going to be attracting you as players, is this notion that you have a character, and this character can level up. And the idea here is that as you're learning new skills, you're ticking boxes on your cards to level them up. Now, as a role-playing gamer, an RPGer, you don't have any problems with writing on stuff, right? But as a board gamer, there's a lot of board gamers who want to keep everything pristine. They'll put little sleeves on their cards so they don't get grubby and all that kind of stuff. I don't do that. I don't mind having things written on, but I will draw the line here, because I may want to play this adventure again. Now, I've got a feeling that you probably could use an erasable marker and get that off, or the rule book says use a light pencil and rub it off. But a solution they provided is that these sheets are downloadable. And what's good about these sheets is not only do they have all the stats that the cards have, they also have the deck list from all the this and all the upcoming adventures. So you can actually create your character, build that character, and then deconstruct it and start again, or maybe even have 2 games running. We have a big empty space here that you can fill with these adventure paths. So here's the first one, adventures rather. This is Burnt Offerings. So this is the first adventure in the Rise of the Rune Lords. The introductory adventure is within these decks here. We've also got this character add-on deck. You won't get this with the base game. This is a separate purchase, but there's 110 cards here. They have some new characters and some new weapons and so on that you can upgrade those characters with. The other thing is you get a set of these dice, one of each type. But what I've done is I've gone off and I've added this one. I'll show you what I use this for once we get into the game. But I've gone and bought a whole bunch more dice. So I've kind of pimped up by adding more dice, because you're going to need them. It's quite annoying having only one set of dice. So everything fits really nicely in here, and it will hold all these little boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 more to come as we play out this adventure. My adventurers have already been through the perils of the Lost Coast introductory scenario, so they are going to come and start the game beefed up a little bit, and we're going to be doing the first scenario of Burnt Offerings for this playthrough. So we start with Hask, the male dwarf ranger, and he's leveled up. I've given him an extra bonus on his dexterity, so if you know the game already, I'm just going to give you a quick shout about what these things mean. I suspect if you're watching this video you come from a gaming world and you already kind of familiar with these kind of concepts of strength, dexterity, constitution, and so on and so on. Linny, a female gnome druid. She's taken an intelligence bonus. This was the reward for completing the Perils of the Lost Coast. And Valeros, the male human fighter. He's taken a strength bonus. What I decided to do was kind of boost their key stats for their first upgrade. And in true RPG style, each of these guys comes with a little background story. Linny, she's always had a way with wild creatures. As an adult, she's become more of a loner, and she's keen to explore and help protect the wild places of the world. She's got a little bag of sticks here. Sticks that she's collected from each of the forests she's visited. They're like a road map of her worldly experiences. Valeros, he's your standard human fighter kind of guy, a good-hearted mercenary, longing for adventure, trained in swordplay. He now fights for those in need, noble of heart and fiercely loyal. Heard to remark, there's nothing better than an evening of hard drinking and soft company. Hask, our male dwarf ranger. We're told he's an unusual sort of dwarf, preferring open skies to cramped underground halls. Prefers the flexibility of a crossbow to the sturdiness of an axe. He's left his home to fulfill a vow of justice to avenge his brother's death at the hands of raiding giants. These are our group of companions, rested from the perils of the Lost Coast, armed and ready to take on the goblins, ancient traps and evil fanatics of the burnt offerings. Each of our characters has a character deck. Their character card will tell you the card list. So Hask here, he carries 5 weapons, 1 armour, 3 items, 1 ally and 5 blessings. Every character has a limit of 15 cards to begin the game. When they get level ups, as we can go through different adventures, you're going to be ticking off these boxes and potentially adding. So, Hask could be getting an extra weapon or learning spells. So these 15 cards are going to make up their deck. As I said, because we've been through Perils of the Lost Coast, we have earned some new stuff, like this scimitar here. There's cards with basic written on them. These are things that you can pull when you built your character initially, things that you built your 15 cards out with. But here we've got a returning throwing axe, for example, a nice magical axe, some elven chainmail, a spyglass, an ally, a human archer, and new blessings, blessing of Iamide. Okay, so Hask's deck has been built out a little bit. Each of our characters has a character deck of 15 cards. So for example, when I built Linny, her basic deck, when I was playing Perils of the Lost Coast, you can see that she has no weapons at all, 6 spells, no armour, 2 items, 3 allies and 4 blessings. So what I'll do is I take this and I go off to the game box and I choose the 15 cards I want. So I get 6 spells. So here's a deck of spells. And I got to choose 6 of them. And I can choose any spells with the basic keyword. Alright, so you just go and build your character up like this. Choose 6 basic spells. And then I would choose 2 items. These are they. So again, it's anything with basic in. Pick 2 items. 3 allies. So these are people that can accompany you on your adventure. Alright, there's always the basic ones. And 4 blessings. Okay. Now these represent the things that the characters can do, but also they represent the character's health. Okay, if this deck ever gets down to 0, then our character is knocked out. So we're going to learn to play this as we play, but what we want to do before we get set up is, we built this deck, is give it a bit of a shuffle. And I think choose our player order as well. So I think Valeros is going to be point man, and then we'll put Linny alongside him. And we'll have Hask here as the rear guard. So I'm going to get these things shoveled up, and then I'll start to set up the game, ready for the next episode when we actually start the adventure. Now we're going to be playing the Rise of the Rune Lords adventure path. An adventure path consists of one or more adventures. So for example, Perils of the Lost Coast was the introductory adventure, and Burnt Offerings is the first adventure in the Rise of the Rune Lords adventure path. So this one actually sits as standalone, but you're going to have a series of adventures sitting underneath this adventure path. And then under each adventure we have a series of scenarios. Burnt Offerings has scenario Attack on Sandpoint, followed by Local Heroes, Trouble in Sandpoint, Approach to Thistletop, and Thistletop Delve. So you can see that as you progress through this adventure, you're kind of working your way this way, down through those, then back onto the next adventure. And the next adventure here is called The Skinshaw Murders, and I think this is coming out next month, November 2013. And there's going to be 6 adventures in all, and each one of these will have its own series of scenarios. We're going to be playing Rise of the Rune Lords. Burnt Offerings is our first adventure, and the first scenario is Attack on Sandpoint. Wielding torches and cackling war songs, goblin raiders dash through the streets of Sandpoint. Find the goblins' ruthless gecko-mounted leader, Chief Rip Nugget, and unmask their ally in Sandpoint before the miniature maniacs set the entire town ablaze.